welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to do my October wrap up. We are in November. We only have 2 more months of the year and then we're in 2024. Oh my goodness. So I've had a pretty bad reading month. Even though I did, I'm going to shout out some stats because I think this is fun and a lot of people do it and I want to start doing it. So I read 10 books in October, which actually sounds pretty good. However, 2 of them were DNFs. So I didn't quite read 10 full books. Page count was about 3,700 pages or so. And on average, the pages per book was 370 around that time. So pretty average sized books, no books that were 700 pages or any of those Sarah J Maas books that I read in September, which did bump up my total pages. I wanted to read quite a bit of horror, obviously for the spooky season, but when it came down to it, I just wasn't in a spooky horror mood, and the books that I did read for the most part disappointed me. I wanted to get a little bit more cozy and just didn't find a book that really spoke to me this last month. However, the last book of the month, which was an Audible book, I gave it 5 stars. So I had 1 5-star book in the whole of October, which I'm pleased about, because otherwise, my average was, I think my average rating for the month is around 3. I gave a few books pretty low scores. So let's start off with everything that I read. So first book that I read, which was in my reading vlog that I last posted, I filmed a second reading vlog for October. I just never posted it because honestly, it was just terrible. I got in such a bad reading slump and I was really bad at updating you, and it was a very boring vlog, so I just never posted it. But anyway, the first book that I read for October, and I gave it 4 stars, was Echo by Thomas Old Huvelt. I like this book. It is a slow burn. I think a lot of people had issues with it because it was slow, and there's different points of view, there's different types of, every chapter is slightly different. So you've got some perspective from Sam, some perspective from Nick. Nick is a mountaineer, he's a hiker, he likes to climb these big, huge Alpine mountains, and he is in an accident. He ends up being hugely disfigured to the point where they take his bandages off. People are in horror of how he looks. Basically, the mountain that he climbed is kind of evil, and it possesses him and things happen, and it's quite fun. I think the concept of it is a good idea. I think if you're not into slow burns and you don't have the patience for those types of books, then I don't think this is the book for you. You do kind of there is a lot in this book where you're kind of waiting for something to happen. There's this lingering tension that keeps building. I personally like that. I don't mind it in books if it's done well, and I think this was done well. I felt that the ending was a little bit vague. I just wasn't able to grasp really what happened at the end. I mean, I kind of know what happened, but I just found it to be a little bit too vague for my liking. I would have liked to have a little bit more of an understanding of exactly what was going on, and less of the wishy-washy, take that as you will sort of writing at the end. I don't know if maybe I just read into it incorrectly, but this is translated as well. It's translated work. He does not write this directly into English, so maybe there's a lot that's missed in the translation. I don't know, but I really enjoyed this book and I gave it 4 stars. So I actually read 3 audiobooks this month, 2 of which were nonfiction. So the first one was Love, Pamela by Pamela Anderson. It's her little memoir, and this is a very short book. I really enjoyed it. At first I thought it was going to be a 4-star, but I do think that the last third of the book did sort of wind down and I lost a little bit of interest at the end. I just felt that there wasn't much for her to say, and so I think the book dragged at the end because it's more about her children and how they're doing really well, and that's great, but for me as a reader, it just was a little bit okay. And maybe she could have added a little bit more into like the things that happened in her life that I guess we would like to know because she was so famous, and so she stepped out of the limelight for a good many years to be a good mother to her sons. I mean, I really praise her for that. I think she's been through a lot, but I don't know. I just think that could have been maybe the last like fifth of the book, not the last third of the book. I just felt like it was just a little like, where is this going? So I ended up giving like a 3.5 on Goodreads. I did enjoy it. And then I wanted to get into my cozy reads. So I decided to pick up the Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laura Gilmore. I should have DNF'd this book. I really should have, because it just isn't for me. It is too bland. It's so dull, and there's a lot of people who are giving it 4 or 5 stars. I don't really know why. Nothing really happens in this book, and honestly it's like 340-50 pages. I think it could have been like 200 pages, and you would have had the exact same story. You would have had the cute little romance, quaint little town. I just don't think we needed also both POVs. We're in the mind of Jeannie, and we're also in the mind of Logan. Logan's the local farmer. Jeannie inherits her aunt's little cafe in this town outside of Chicago. She decides to move there, start a new life. And I just don't, I feel like it was insta love, and I didn't really care for it all that much. There wasn't a lot of conflict. There wasn't any, like, there wasn't too much reason for them not to be together, but I feel like Lori tried to make it more of a big deal for them, you know, not to be together, but, you know, they wanted to be together. There wasn't enough tension. There wasn't enough of that for me to really, for it to make it believable. Anyway, so yeah, I initially gave this 2 stars on Goodreads, and then I was like, no, because there are some 2-star books that are better than this. So I bumped it down to a 1 star. I don't really feel bad about it, because honestly, it's my personal preference. I should have DNF'd the book, but I read the whole book. It just was so boring. Nothing happened. It was insta love. It's just not my cup of tea. Moving on, I still wanted to find sort of that romance that I was craving at the time. So I did start reading Tessa Bailey's Hookline and Sinker, which I liked a lot better than the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. This one, though, is still not amazing, and maybe I just don't like these types of romances. It's a very, like, the only romance that's not been fantasy that I have liked has been from Emily Henry, and that was Book Lovers. I gave that a 5 star, and I feel like all the other romances that I've been reading have been 3 stars, maybe less, maybe more, and that's about it. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just super picky about the male character or how the romance comes about. This is somewhat of it's not really a second chance romance. It's more like friends to lovers, but it's, from the word go, you know, they're gonna get together. Like, there's not enough. For me, the same thing kind of happened with this book, but it was still a nice book. There's not a tension where there's no reason for them to be together other than, what's his face? Fox is the male character. He basically has a bad reputation with women. He sleeps around, and he just never really has a long-term girlfriend. I think the only one he had, she broke his heart. And, you know, it's just one of those things where, I don't know, I didn't find that super believable, but I did find the book itself cute, and their romance was sweet. I don't know, it didn't capture me the way that I hope a romance would capture me. So I ended up giving it a 3 star. I feel like it's middle of the road. You can pick it up. It's a really nice, easy read. It's pretty long too. This is 380 pages. I don't really know why you need a romance this heavy. Okay, in the midst of reading those, I was also reading Ripe by Sarah Rose Etter. I actually started this in September, but it's one of those books that's really hard to read. It's a very small book. It's only 220 or so pages, really short, and some of the chapters are really short, or they're just a couple of pages and that's it. And this was another one that I read in my vlog, and basically you have one chapter where you're kind of following Cassie's life, and then you have another chapter where it's like a word, and then the they just, you know, what the dictionary version, like what the dictionary description is of that word, and then what Cassie's description is of that word. Like this is the start of a chapter. Like you can see we have a lot of empty space. So there's really not a lot to read in this book, but it is about Cassie, who is working in San Francisco. She's in the hustle and bustle of, you know, the tech world there, and she is really on a downward spiral in terms of her mental health. She is hugely depressed. She is taking a lot of drugs and cocaine just to sort of numb herself of the world, and the fact that she basically hates it, and she hates everyone that she works with. She hates her job. She just hates everything. She also has a boyfriend that who is in a open relationship with her. So he actually has a girlfriend and she is his side piece. And, you know, she lets that happen because she's just so miserable, and she just, you know, she's just, I don't know, she's got a lot of damage to her. Now, this book hasn't got any trigger warnings, I don't think. And I think it should have, because there are parts of the book that you kind of, and it's like the overall arching theme, I think, and why it's called Ripe, which I did not realize until you kind of like midway through the book. I kind of just missed it really. And if I had known what the book would have in it, I wouldn't have bought the book, because it just upset me a little bit in terms of some of the things that happened. Now, I thought this was going to be a really weird, eerie, dark book, which it is. She basically has this black hole that hovers around her and has been hovering around her for her whole life. It's just one of these weird books where you have to kind of immerse yourself into her mind, which is a little twisted. Like, she says some weird things. I did tab a little bit of the book, but then I just stopped tabbing it. I didn't really feel the need to tab this book at the end of the day when I kind of found out where it was heading. And the ending is also very ambiguous. There is no ending, really. So spoiler alert, you kind of don't really know what happens, and it's open for interpretation. So if you like those types of books, I guess I would recommend it. I did end up giving it a 4 stars. So even though I've said everything I've said, I think as a book, I can't give it a lower score than that. It's written beautifully. There's a lot of things in the book that are triggering, but also like heartbreaking, and commentary about the world and potentially, you know, what people go through, and, you know, mental health and all that. Like, I can't give it a lower score because I don't think it's trying to be anything that it's not. So yeah, I did enjoy it, but I wouldn't have picked it up had I known what it was about, if that makes sense. All right, and then my first DNF of the month. Oh my gosh, I am embarrassed to talk about this book, but I recently bought and ordered this online. This is Court of the Vampire Queen by Katie Robert. I thought this was going to be like a dark romance, which I think technically it is. However, it is like pure smut. It's from like the first page onwards, like literally every single page they're doing it. And for me, there's no plot line. It's very tedious and boring. And I think I got to page like 80 or something, or 89 or 98, something like that, in the 90s or 80s. And I was like, I'm done. There's no point in me reading the rest of this book. It's not going anywhere. And then I went on Goodreads, and I think apparently like the very last part of the book is where the plot comes back in. But basically, if you're into these types of books, that's absolutely fine. It's about a girl called Mina, which is like one of my favorite girl names, so I find it very odd that I'm reading about this. So Mina is half human, half vampire, and her father is horrible, and she sells him to this vampire to basically be his like blood slave or something like that. And that's just basically where you get to. And then as soon as she's there, they're like all over each other, and he's all over her, and she's like hot for him, whatever. If you like those types of books, it's absolutely fine. But for me, I wanted a dark romance with a little bit of substance, and this is not it. And that's fine. I will probably just stay away from this author if this is all that she writes, because it's just not something that I want to read. Okay, moving on. I've been also reading 12 Nights at Rotterhouse by J.W. Oker. I finally finished this in October. And this one was disappointing. So I was really into this book. I started reading it in September. I read like only like 20 pages, and then I finally like picked it up in October. I was like, I gotta read this. It was only like a couple weeks left of October. I have to finish this. I want to finish this. It's spooky. It's about basically he is a travel writer. He wants to write this book about this haunted house, and he asked the owner if he can be there for 13 nights to like document if there's any hauntings and everything for his book, and she allows him. So he goes there, and every chapter is a new night in the house, and basically what he ends up doing is he stays awake all throughout the night, and then he sleeps through the day because he thinks that, you know, there's going to be more spooky things happen during the night. I think it's day or night 3 or 4 where his best friend comes and joins him. He had asked his best friend to come and join him. They've been friends for like 20 years, and they're big, huge horror movie buffs. And all they talk about is like films and horror movies, and, you know, every night something kind of weird happens in the house, and they document it. And he's got like cameras everywhere and stuff. And he is very against the supernatural and believing in ghosts and stuff like that. His name is Felix. He is not a believer at all, but his best friend is. And like when it gets spookier and spookier, he's like, surely you must believe now, blah, blah, blah. And to be fair, there are some really weird things that happens in this house, but there is a big but. This could have been so good. This could have been such a good book, and that's why I'm disappointed, because I think the premise of it is amazing, because there is a twist at the end, and I didn't really see it coming, not to what it really was, but I think the majority of the book lets it down because it's really boring. You know, there are some spooky parts that happen, and I started tabbing a little part of there, but then literally like a page or 2 after the spooky bits happen, J.W. Oker's like, oh, just kidding, that was something else, you know, and he takes away the magic of the fact that, oh, was that something weird, or was that just something normal? Like, that is what I really am annoyed about. I wish that he had left those parts as they are and left them ambiguous to us as a reader, like, actually, wait a second, did that actually happen? Or is he a unreliable narrator, or, you know, something like that? But anyway, I ended up giving it 3-star on Goodreads. I think it's technically a 2.5. I do feel bad about that, but, you know, you can't really do half points, and I didn't want to give it a 2-star. I think it deserves a little bit more, but I don't think it's quite there as a 3-star, just because for the majority of me reading this, I was just so bored, and I just was like, what's going on? Like, where are we going with this plot? Because the spooky parts were good, and he could have done so much more with it and still kept the twist at the end. He still could have kept everything as it were. Maybe just keep the reader in the dark a little bit more, just so we're kind of maybe second guessing things too. I think that would have made the book a 4-star read as opposed to a 2.5. So very disappointed in this book. I had high hopes. I did see, you know, some mixed reviews about it before I bought it anyway, but I was hoping that I would be the special one and give it a higher rating, but oh well. Okay, and then I did decide to read the Britney Spears book, The Woman in Me, on Audible when it came out at the end of October. So this one I listened to in one day. It's only like 5 hours, 6 hours to listen to. Not a long book at all, and I just listened to it while I worked that day. Really, really good book. I was very intrigued because obviously you saw the headlines that came out of really what was in the book and all the discoveries and things and that people really didn't know about, and I just wanted to hear it from her. One of the negatives that I have about the book is that she didn't narrate it herself. I usually just want to read about somebody from their own lips. She obviously didn't write the book either. It's ghostwritten, so you know, there's like 2 little negatives there. However, I think what she put in the book was interesting to know. And I think what she's been through is really worse than what we all thought. We've known for, you know, close to 15 years that she has been suffering. And yeah, it's been longer than that, really. I mean, she has, I think the problem that Britney Spears probably faced was because in the early 90s, Nobody really spoke about mental health. Nobody got the help that they needed. Nobody was listened to in that respect and taken seriously. So she couldn't open up about these things. And the tabloids at that time, I remember, were so horrendous. Every single week, they were trying to get the worst pictures of celebrities, drunk, passed out, trying to attack paparazzi because they were antagonizing them. Like, what are you going to expect? Like, these people are human beings. So all of that's in the book. You know, her relationship with her family, who honestly, I feel like her family needs to be locked up and put away in jail, especially her father, but also her mother. I think her mother is just as accountable, her sister too. Like, it is really, really bad that they have let this happen to their child. Like, they purposely did it to their child and continue to bombard her and treat her like shit. So yeah, you know, there's a lot in there. There's all the stuff about her relationships with Kevin Federline, Justin Timberlake, all her other maybe previous sort of dabblings. Found it very interesting and gave it 4 stars. I thought it was really good. And also the narrator on Audible was really good. After a time, I kind of forgot it wasn't even Britney Spears because she was doing like, I don't know, she had a Southern accent. So I thought, oh, you know, you know, for me, it was very easy to listen to, really easy book to listen to. And I was engaged and intrigued about what she had to say. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I like that book. Okay, and then I wanted to read another romance book, so I picked up The Final Offer. This is the last book of the Billionaires trilogy by Lauren Asher. This, unfortunately, is my second DNF of the month. I could not finish this book. I don't like her writing. I've realized I've read 3 books from her now, or 2.5, because I didn't finish this one. I couldn't get through it. And I honestly got to like halfway, and I was like, honestly, I was like skipping pages. And then I thought to myself, why am I trying to read or finish this book by skipping pages? Why am I going to waste my time? Let's just not read it. You know, it just wasn't, I didn't like the male character Cal. I thought he was awful. I didn't like the premise. I didn't, you know, if you're going to give me a flawed character, at least give me something to like about them. And I think the problem with this trilogy is all 3 brothers, they're all 3 brothers of this, basically, it's like a Disney dynasty, really. One of them has inherited, like, let's say the Dreamland theme parks, which is kind of based off Disneyland. And then the other one is like this corporate office guy, and he's really like stone-faced. That's the second book. And he basically falls in love with his secretary, right? And then this one is the younger brother, and he has substance abuse issues, like, you know, has drinking issues, drug issues. He's a full-on addict with that, and he doesn't take any accountability for it. I don't feel like in this book he has any redeeming qualities whatsoever. And it's a second chance romance, so he goes back to a town that he spent a lot of time as a child, and there is still this woman. She's a woman now, but back in the day, she was a young girl, and they knew each other when they were like late teens or something, early 20s, and they were together, and then they haven't seen each other for like 6 or 7 years, something like that. And yeah, I just think he treats her like shit, really, and I didn't like it. And I didn't feel like I don't feel like he had any right to demand her, I don't know, her love or, you know, win her back, because why would she go with him? Why? I just didn't understand it. So I DNF'd it. I didn't like it. And sadly, you know, Lauren Asher's got a lot of other books. And I know she's got more coming out for like other sort of trilogy style books, but I'm not a fan of her writing, or like, it's not even her writing. I just don't like her story ideas. I don't know. I don't like it. So not an author that I'm going to try again, unfortunately. And the last book that I read, which was my 5-star, and I'm so happy that I actually did read a good book this last month, because aside from Echo, everything, I mean, Ripe I did give 4 stars, but really it's not like a book I'm going to be saying, this is an amazing book, whatever. But, you know, and Echo too, and a lot of people are not going to like that book. But this final book that I read, gave it 5 stars. It's by Lisa Jewell and is None of This Is True. I listened to it on Audible, and honestly, I didn't think I was going to like it. I have not liked thrillers that much in the past. I've always found them to be very predictable, kind of written fast, and, you know, they're one of those, for me, they're just a book that you would read in 1 or 2 days and then forget about it. However, I felt like this book was really good. And now on Audible, they have like the production, basically a production. They have like a full cast of people reading the different clips. And it kind of feels like a documentary, really. It kind of feels like you're listening to a documentary about it. So I think that added to my enjoyment of it. Maybe I would have felt differently if I actually had the physical book, but after reading it, I kind of wish I did have the physical book because I would love to have read it as a book, I think, because I've liked it so much. So how can I explain this? So there are two main characters that you kind of start off with for the first, there's like 4 parts of the book. And for the first part is like the biggest part of the book. And you follow Alex, who has a podcast, and she is sort of approached by this other girl who I cannot for the life of me ever remember her name, but she's the one to look out for. And she's like, I have this amazing story for you. The way that they meet is weird. They both have the same birthday. And she just becomes kind of obsessed with Alex to like a weird point. And yeah, you don't really know who is telling the truth in this book for a long time, and even towards the end as well. Like that carries forth to the bitter end. So I feel like this is a good book. That's all I'm going to say about it. It's basically her telling Alex the story of her life and everything, and mostly the story of her and her husband and how they got together, and painting this picture of, you know, all the trauma that she's been in. And Alex is like eating it all up. She's like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be amazing for my podcast. You know, she's like, but also all the while she realizes that she's kind of a weird woman. But she ignores that, and she ignores her instincts because she's like, this is gonna be a great podcast episode for me. So that's kind of the premise. And then it just spirals out of control. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I like, because I read so much crap this last month, reading that, that was a joy to read. So I gave it 5 stars. Had I read better books this last month, maybe I would have given it like a 4-star. I'm not entirely sure, but I definitely was like, I can't give this less. This has to be a 5-star. It's the best book I've read all month. I'm gonna definitely give it a 5-star. And I think I need to read more thrillers to really see if it holds up to being a 5-star, because I haven't really read that many thrillers yet since I've come back to reading. I've read a lot of thrillers in the past, but I've never like loved them. So I just felt like this one was different. And I actually have a book from Lisa Jewell already on my TBR. So maybe I'll just read that and see. Maybe she's, I know that my mom really likes that author, so maybe I will read her. And I'll just fall down the rabbit hole because she has so many books. Okay, so yeah, that is everything that I read in October. Definitely more books than I expected. I think because I listened on Audible for those 3, like the 2 nonfiction and then that last book, I bumped up my numbers. I just didn't really feel like picking up books this month. I have 3 books that I'm currently reading that I was hoping to finish in October, but I didn't. So the first book that I started, which was in one of my vlogs, was The Nature of Witches. This is a YA book, and I don't know, maybe it's something that it's YA or not. I started tabbing a lot of it, but then I just decided not to do anymore. So I've only read like 40 pages of it. I was enjoying it. It's about witches, and Clara is an ever-witch. So she's like one of the most like powerful witches to come to be in the last 50 or I don't know, 100 years or whatever it is. She's very rare. And basically in this world, witches are able to they pull their strengths from the season. So you have winter witches, you have spring witches, autumn witches, summer witches. And as an ever witch, she can draw her power from all 3 seasons. She can draw her power from other witches who are winter, spring, summer, whatever. And as the passing of new season happen, she actually changes slightly and her powers shift slightly, and also her emotions and her feelings towards people change. So she's in a relationship at the moment. Like at the start of the book, it's the end of summer, and then we move straight into autumn. She's like with this boy, and then as soon as like literally the next day they wake up and she has like no feelings for him. And that happens to her because she's an Everwitch. So I feel like that in itself is very interesting. And the witches are all about trying to basically combat climate change because us non-witchy people have ruined the planet, of course. So there's a huge metaphor in here about climate change. The weather is crazy and there's all these weird weather patterns and they're trying to use. So it's all about that. And I thought the premise was really cool and interesting. I just didn't get back into it. So something to pick up, especially for this month. I also started reading Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. I like this book. So the way that this is written, it's written in a prose that I'm not huge about. It's like old school prose in a way, at least how I read it, and that's not really my preference. I've only got to page, what is it, page 65, and actually the last part of the book that I had read before I stopped reading it, it got enjoyable, and I actually kind of giggled and I was like kicking my feet because there's this character called I think it's Weldon or Wendell. He is her colleague, and obviously there's a little romance in this, of course, and you can just tell that there's going to be a romance between those two. But I really like this character because she basically goes and she's trying to study these fae in this very remote area in Ireland, and he goes to visit unannounced, just pops up, and she's like covered in mud and looks a mess, and he's like, oh well, no, nice, you're settling in well, you know. He's obviously the typical you know, British humor there, and she suspects that he is fae. So she suspects that he is not a human, but he's masking like who he really is. Which maybe that happens, I'm not really sure, but I'm only 60 pages in. I thought it was really cute. But you have to be in the mood for this type of book, and I wasn't in the mood to pick it back up. But hopefully this month I can read it again. And then I also started Hex by Thomas Oldhubolt, who is the author of Echo. So I already had this book. I bought this book and Echo at the same time. Everybody says Hex is better than Echo, so I was like, oh yeah, okay, great. I've only read up to 24, page 24. I haven't got too far in. It starts weird. Honestly, I don't even remember reading the description, if I'm all that honest. So when I started the book, I was pretty surprised. The people in this town are aware of this supernatural woman that has her eyes closed, and she like appears in the town. I'll read it to you. A 17th century woman with sewn shut eyes and mouth walks its streets, enters its homes, watches its people when they sleep. And they call her the Black Rock Witch. So you're like thrown into like an everyday day of this town, this small town, and straight away, like, this woman is just standing in someone's living room and they throw a bag over her head because they don't want to look at her while they're eating. And then their little child is like, you know, doing a YouTube video and they're like, don't have her on the video, blah, blah. And I'm just thinking, what am I reading? Like, it starts off like you're thrown into it, and there's like no like build up. You're like, you're trying to figure out what's going on. So after I read the blurb and I was like, okay, wait, okay, fine, yeah, okay. I was a little thrown off by the beginning, I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't sucked in straight away by the premise. I'm hoping it gets good. It's definitely weird and very different to his other books. So, you know, we'll just have to wait and see. But this one I still want to read this month as well. So anyway, that is everything. I've not done a November TBR because I just think I'm a mood reader and I really don't know. And I've ordered a bunch of other books as well. So I just don't know what I'm going to read next. Maybe I need to stay away from romance at the moment. I do want to do a vlog though of reading the Throne of Glass books by Sarah J Maas. So if you want to see a reading vlog of me reading the whole set, which may take me a couple months, I'm not going to lie, then just let me know because I definitely want to read that. And you know, if you want to see a dedicated video of it or two, then let me know as well. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.